dreads, appreciate it, man.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our mobile studio. As always, thank you for taking this ride with us as we continue making our film about a solution to homelessness.
So how do you think it's going so far?
I think it's been going pretty great. It's been a very busy, very productive summer, and we haven't even been able to do a proper behind the scenes episode in a while. So it's really good to be back.
Good to see you.
We last saw you in Seattle at the Housing First Partners Conference. And then we took a drive down the coast to LA, and what a drive it was. Check out this breathtaking beauty.
Look at Los Angeles with the tents and the horrible, horrible, disgusting conditions.
The crisis that affects every corner of Southern California.
From Hollywood to Venice Beach, scenes from what could be a disaster movie.
I have dual citizenship. I was born a Hoosier, but I lived 20 years in LA. I'm an Angelino as well. I care about this place. It was very important to me that we come here. I started my homelessness journey by going down to Skid Row and passing out food and clothes. It never made any sense to me, the living conditions. Never. Homelessness in LA is a mystery to most Angelinos, and certainly to the rest of the country. The City of Angels has to start getting it right. LA is complicated, but we're going to make sense of it for you. So sit back, relax, and watch with us.
For so long, homelessness was confined to just a couple of neighborhoods. It was on the beaches, it was in Skid Row, and there was homelessness in Hollywood. And that's kind of it.
We have 66,000 people experiencing homelessness. About 3/4 of those are unsheltered. They're on our streets, they're in our communities. We've seen a growth of encampments during the pandemic.
The new numbers came out recently, and there are now 69,000 people experiencing homelessness in LA County. We spent time with quite a few people, nonprofits and industry thought leaders, representatives from business and government, churches and volunteers, lawyers and homeless advocates. And still our favorite, folks with lived experience.
Those people out there are my people. I don't care what they look like or what they smell like. They're not a piece of trash. You just step over them.
I lived in that tree down there. You see that path going to that tree? I lived underneath the bridge, because underneath the bridge is another bridge, and I lived underneath that bridge.
Black middle-aged elderly women here in Skid Row in Los Angeles, we track as a #1 demographic of women that's placed into poverty and homelessness by huge disproportionate numbers. Homelessness is trauma.
If you glance at LA, you would think nobody's doing anything to fix homelessness, but that's not true. We were happy to learn there's a lot of great work being done there.
People who live in the city of LA voted to tax themselves to build housing.
Triple H is about building more deeply affordable housing for people experiencing homelessness.
The rest of the county, including the city of LA, we all taxed ourselves to do services for homeless people.
Measure H provides a lot of those services and supports.
What that means is the county is funding the case management services. So every client who's moving into one of those city units actually has a case manager that is funded by the county.
There is money for homeless services.
We also learned of many organizations doing great work to address homelessness.
St. Joseph Center has housed hundreds of people over the years. And there's probably about 2,000 or so people that we're actively maintaining our connection with and providing case management.
Last year, as an example, we moved over 1,100 households into permanent housing from homelessness.
Every year for about the next 5 to 8 years, we have single site developments in the pipeline.
I manage the Home for Good initiative, which means that our team is doing policy and systems change, which means we're studying sort of what's working and not working about the homeless crisis response here in Los Angeles. We are trying to be responsible for bringing everyone together to stay focused on it.
The Homeless Initiative is the lead for the County of Los Angeles for programs to prevent and address homelessness. Since the start of Measure H, over 80,000 people have been assisted back into permanent housing.
We did find permanent housing for 80,000 people in the last 5 years. It's extraordinary because we certainly didn't think 5 years ago that we would be able to accomplish that much.
So hang on. There are 69,000 people experiencing homelessness in LA County, and in the last 5 years, they've housed 80,000 people. That should have solved the whole thing, right?
When we think about what is the real issue in LA, we house 207 people every day, and 227 people become homeless every day.
You can't just look at people who are on the streets right now. You also have to stop the inflow.
Is there a way to get like a coalition somehow to say, if we just shut that faucet off a little bit, we can get ahead of this?
Who's in charge? Who's in charge of homelessness in Los Angeles?
There is no leader, right? There's no single person who is tasked with moving us forward.
There is not an ultimate entity that has oversight of all of the homeless resources in the County of LA.
So you have a county and a city.
No, we have a county and 88 cities.
LA is a complicated jurisdiction. It's got 88 cities inside of one county. It's one of the largest governments in the country, where power is diffused. You've got 5 county supervisors who are extremely powerful.
Yeah, my district is bigger than 27 states. So I think I should have 2 senators too, just for my district.
We have the city of LA, which, has these 15 council members and a mayor.
The challenge is that the charter of the LA city is a weak mayor system and a strong council system.
And so it's not like Boston or New York, where a mayor comes in with a huge amount of executive authority. 16 elected officials, the mayor and all 15 council members, have to get on board with a strategy, or enough of us.
This changes the perception of LA. We're led to believe that the mayor of LA is the most powerful government official. But it's the 5 county supervisors who are far more powerful than the mayor. The mayor of LA cannot advance an agenda without the approval of the majority of the council. Therefore, the mayor has no power to mandate homeless policy. But since the mayor of LA is the ambassador of LA, blame for the homeless issue gets pinned to their lapel.
When you zoom out, this community looks chaotic in terms of our response to this crisis, because it is.
It seems like there needs to be somebody or some entity that ties both of them together in an authoritative way.
They did create a body that tied them together. It was LASA.
Back in the 90s, there was a lawsuit between the city of LA and the county over who should be responsible for the homelessness crisis at the time. And they said, we'll create LASA.
What is LASA?
Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority.
Were you part of a lawsuit that the city and county?
The idea of LASA came from Julie Downey, who was an assistant city attorney. She had this idea, we should set aside our hostilities and join together and try to mutually solve this problem.
Who's in charge, actually?
So the idea was that LAHSA would be that entity, but over time, we see that what it really takes to end homelessness is probably more power than people are willing to give up.
What is the dysfunction?
I had 31 bosses, so I had 10 commissioners or a board, plus all of the elected officials at the city, the city council members and the mayor, as well as the 5 members of the board of supervisors. So LAHSA does not have the authority that it needs to administer the funding, drive the policies forward, and to give direction to the system.
It seems like just the way it's set up structurally, it can't solve the problem.
You're right, that system is not well designed to handle a complicated problem like homelessness.
Every council member, they really function as the mayor of their own district. So they decide what happens in this side of the sidewalk, and then another person has an approach. So fundamentally, there's no agreement on what success looks like.
Some would say the county is responsible, some say the city, some say LAHSA. I say it's been masterfully created so that everybody can point the finger at one another and nobody takes full responsibility. That's the space we sit in right now.
LA is the epicenter of unsheltered homelessness in the United States. And we said we're gonna make sense of it for you.
What I love about LA is when it's time to get real, it gets real, son.
Everybody is doing whatever they can to hide the problem because it's a political nightmare. People lose their seats as elected officials when you see the visibility of homelessness like you do in LA. So it drives poor choices.
So the amount of money that's being racked up right now.
On this call, right. $10,000, maybe $15,000. That's already a year's rent for one of those people in that campsite. Just this one call. 15 grand, given all the personnel and the trucks and, we're just pouring money into the emergency response, but never actually addressing the heart of the issue, which is the fact that they're still homeless with no housing, and that's what's perpetuating it. So by the end of the year, you've spent $50,000 per person in that encampment, and they've got nothing. And we've just wasted all that money on emergency response when we could have housed them easily and provided the service support for those that need it.
And about how much would that cost versus the $50,000 per person?
25, 30.
There's a lot of people moving with a lot of urgency to have the average Angelino not have to see it and not have to confront it. And I think we haven't yet established a unified vision. We haven't agreed on what that solution looks like, and we haven't agreed on a process that aligns with our values to get there.
I also think that people like myself, and I'm loud. I'm loud in all the spaces, and not because I like to be loud. I don't even like to talk that much, but because it's just ridiculous and the status quo won't do. And so I also think there's a space, obviously, for nonprofit leaders, civic leaders like myself to speak up and push. But obviously, I'm not sitting in an elected seat. I don't control the purse strings. And so we can push and push and push and bring light to the things that may not be commonly understood about how policies and funding decisions impact the people who we're trying to help. Ultimately, the people who have the ability to set policies, set funding, and make decisions are moving in the right direction, but we are sorely lacking at this very moment that I'm speaking to you. Mm-hmm. Sorely. It's ridiculous.
So you just recently resigned your position at LAHSA.
I found out there were people making $33,000 a year that worked for LAHSA. So these are folks on the front line, outreach workers, literally all through COVID, and they were on housing assistance and working multiple jobs because of how low we were paying them.
Did you have people who were working that were homeless?
Yeah.
So they were working to serve people who they were?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I raised the minimum salary at LAHSA so that nobody made less than $50,000 a year, which is still considered low income by the federal government standards in LA. There were 193 people who got a pay bump. 91% were Black and brown. Frontline workers. That felt like this is one of the most basic equity principles that we all talk about. But then if we come back and question it and say, well, I don't know if you have the authority to do it. I don't know if it should have happened this way. What are we really saying about what we believe?
From our observations on this journey, only those communities who have a unified vision and proactively and deliberately work together will have success addressing their homelessness crisis. Without this unity, communities don't have a real shot at success. Is this unity even possible for LA?
Venice has always been a place which has had homelessness for many, many years.
Last summer, we saw a very drastic increase in homelessness on the Venice Boardwalk.
It is a problem that's only getting worse along the boardwalk.
It's like a third world country at this point.
And we were a part of a group of service providers, of elected officials, of folks from LAPD and various other city departments, sanitation, etc. And we came together with one major goal, that we would house people off of the boardwalk. And we, at the end of the day, after about 6 weeks, housed 213 people. We've been able to keep 86% of those folks housed and on their way to success.
Well, there's your answer. Communities that are willing to collaborate and work together on a unified plan will have success addressing their homeless issue. It's true in Milwaukee, it's true in Houston, and it's true in LA, as we just saw.
We should probably mention, though, that soon after we left LA, this big homeless camp in Venice got swept by the city, and the people who lived in it got displaced without being offered any housing. Since then, we've been receiving reports of tents returning to Venice Beach, because we all know by now that sweeping camps is not a solution. Housing and services is.
We'd like to thank the people doing great work who agreed to come on film and talk with us on this trip. Because of you, we think that within the next 5 years, LA is going to look completely different in a positive way. When we asked everyone if there were other municipalities to borrow ideas from, one city kept coming up.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in Houston lately. So I hear a lot of questions about Houston.
Houston has been raised as a way in which they've organized around homelessness that has alignment and allows, the entity that's overseeing the resources to have some autonomy to get the job done without having a lot of different pressures on it. Like, everybody else is just letting them do their work.
I guess we're going to Houston.
I guess so.
In the meantime, please like this video, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel and all of our social media channels. This will really help us spread the word about our project. Until next time.
Ciao.